That is disgusting. No, don't retext it to me. I'm talking to my team off mic. What's this woman's name? Don't text it because I have something open on my text that I need. What is it? Nicole Killian? Nicole Killian. You're a hack. Do your fucking homework, you absolute loser. It's...
Welcome to the Be Wise podcast. I am your host, Chris Wright, where we talk entertainment, politics, sports, and social media. So today's show is going to be about Donald Trump's nomination for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. And the reason I want to talk about him is for two reasons. Primarily, I want to talk about the allegations about his conduct, both sexual and family-oriented. But the other thing I want to talk about is what I talked about in another social media episode that I did about sexual allegations against men, how they stick, how they're hard to shake, the way the media sees them, the way the public sees them, and that once you're accused of such an act or behavior or misappropriation, you're basically guilty until proven innocent. So this Pete Hegseth situation really resonated with me, and I really wanted to talk about that. And what I said in my TikTok is that basically there will be headlines about you. There will be, if you work for an employer, the whole company will know what happened. And all it is an accusation. You're being accused of something that you may or may not have done, but you have to prove that you didn't. And it's happened to me. I was accused of sexual harassment, not sexual assault. And I ultimately left the company because I was embarrassed. So in situations like that, a man has really no recourse. And a lot of times, if you're a celebrity or if you're someone of notability, they tell you to settle. The woman can come after you, ask you to settle a lawsuit. And they say, we have to believe women. We have to believe women. So once you're accused of sexual assault, the immediate thing to do is to believe the woman, and then you need to sort out the mess afterwards. So a lot of times they may tell you, why don't you just settle? She wants $2 million or $500,000 or whatever. And if you say, yep, you sign a non-disclosure agreement, you pay her off to go away. And why do men do that? Because sometimes it may be they could lose a job. Sometimes a corporation may tell you, go ahead and settle with her. We don't want to drag this out. We want it over and done with. If you're a smaller person, like a regular common man, your employer may tell you, you've been accused, bye-bye, you're fired. Maybe you just don't want your family to suffer, your wife, your kids, this dragging out in the news. Maybe you're up for some type of high-profile position. You were just up for promotion and this comes out. And in this case, this guy, Pete Hegseth, worked for Fox News. He had a stellar military jacket. And now he's going to be pegged for Secretary of Defense. And some people just don't want it to happen. So the easiest thing to do basically is to bring up his sexual allegations and run with it. And I think it's so unfair. It's part of the Me Too movement. And I think personally that women who accuse men of these allegations, they should have to pay a heavy penalty for that. Whether it's a fine or jail time, loss of career, something to put them at the same risk as men go through. And a lot of times women will sign a non-disclosure agreement after settlement, and they'll still find some way to bring it out. And that too is unfair because you've already paid. You paid the money, but you're not exactly safe. So it's unfortunate. Anyway, so today I'm going to be using all the content that I'm going to be using is from the Megyn Kelly show. I love Megyn Kelly, but she also had a personal friendship with Pete Hegseth. She worked with him on Fox News. She actually recommended him to be a contributor, and he did that. And she's also very passionate about law. She was a lawyer. Actually, Megyn Kelly is actually from the area that I live in upstate New York. She went to Albany Law School. I think she's from Del Mar, and just someone who I listened to for a long time. Very strong conservative values, strong conservative views. And so I'm going to be using a lot of her content in today's podcast, but I will definitely give her credit for that. So the first thing I want to start with is the actual CBS report, and it's going to go through the recollection of what happened with the allegations. And excuse the language, Megyn's just very passionate. There's some words she may use that you may find appropriate, but I don't want to cut her out. It's her show. But again, I highly recommend that you take a look at her. All right, here's Megyn.
According to the report, a woman referred to as Jane Doe met Hegseth during a conference at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. Both were drinking with a group at the hotel bar when Doe said things got fuzzy. A nurse who treated her later said Doe believed something may have been slipped into her drink. She then recalled being in a hotel room when Hegseth took her phone from her hand. When she got up to leave, Hegseth blocked the door with his body. Her next memory was when she was on a bed or a couch and Hegseth was over her. His dog tags were hovering over her face.
I don't know the young lady.
Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullin said Hegseth addressed the allegation in their meeting.
I don't think there's any way in the world you're going to say that this is a sexual assault.
What makes you so confident about that?
Have you read the report?
I actually have. I've got it right here.
I read the report too. It's pretty clear that of what took place. It was pretty clear that it was. She definitely wasn't drugged to a room. It was two people flirting with each other.
Well, it also said she couldn't get out of the room.
Well, that's one person's opinion.
Hegseth's attorney told CBS News police found the allegations to be false and claimed it was Hegseth who was intoxicated and the woman who was the aggressor. He also confirmed the Fox News host paid the woman an unknown sum of money after she threatened to sue, fearing it could cost him his job.
That is disgusting. No, don't retext it to me. I'm talking to my team off mic. What's this woman's name? Don't text it because I have something open on my text that I need. What is it? Nicole Killian? Nicole Killian. You're a hack. Do your fucking homework, you absolute loser. It's
Told you Megyn was passionate. Anyway, yeah, so that is how the reason I want to show that, because this Nicole, whatever her name is, that lady in the blue dress, is asking questions. She has the report in her hand. The guy goes, yeah, I read the report. And she goes, I have it in my hand. She didn't say she read it. She just goes, I have it in my hand. If she had read the report, she would have all the information that she needed to make an informed decision. Be a journalist. Do your job. That's what Megyn Kelly was saying. So I just found that to be extremely, extremely interesting and biased. And she could care less about the facts. She cares nothing about the facts. Here's Megyn actually going through the allegations for us, reading them and bullet pointing them to show how this gentleman is being railroaded.
okay. You know the allegations. Jane Doe, that's what she's going by, claims that she and Pete hooked up. Well, no, she claims it was a rape. He claims it was a hookup at an event for some California Republican women's group in October of 2017. She claims that she may have been slipped a drug, that the details are fuzzy, but that days later she started to recall that she was in a sexual interlude with him and that it was non-consensual. And while the details were blurry, she remembered saying no a lot. Well, okay, that's fine. That's what's all over the news, all over. And then he blocked the door. She tried to get out, but he blocked the door, which you heard that reporter, Nicole, throw back at that lawmaker like it was the alpha and omega of the story. Nicole, pay attention, sweetheart. I'm here for you. In fact, if you look at this police report, here are some of the details not reported by the hacks at CBS. Just a couple. Jane Doe, we don't get to know her name. We only get to know Pete. We get to see Pete Hegseth, rape defendant, but we don't get to know anything about Jane Doe. What's Jane Doe's history? Has Jane Doe accused others? Is Jane Doe known as a credible and truthful person? Does Jane Doe have a history of dishonesty or potentially even criminality?
I want to pause right there. So I said earlier that I was personally, I was accused of sexual harassment. And just a little, I'm going to tell you the quick and dirty is that I come back from vacation. I was heading into my job. I was stopped at the door by loss prevention and said, wait, I need you to stop. Like, wait, I'm coming to work. Anyway, yeah, Chris, hold on. I was very friendly with loss prevention, but he was doing his job. He said, I got to go in the back. I'll be right back to get you. I was like, okay, what's going on? So finally he goes, okay, come with me. He follows me. Another loss prevention guy is behind me. One's in front of me. Felt like I was being escorted out. Like, this is weird. So I go back to this office and I go inside and there's a group of people. My boss, my boss's boss, loss prevention, people from HR, a couple of other people. I don't remember. And then they open, hey, Chris, how's it going? How's vacation? I'm not in the mood for small talk at this point. What's going on? Then finally they come out and say, you've been accused of sexual harassment. We just want to go through the details, procedure, tell you what your rights are, this, that, and the other. And boom. And I was like, but I wanted to point out the fact that he told me a whole lot of stuff. What was said, the fact that I was being accused, what other people said, but they would not tell me who my accuser was. And I got really, really angry. I just came on vacation. You're accusing me of something. You got to tell me who it is. Well, compromising situation. It could be dangerous for her. We don't want you to retaliate, this, that, and the other. Anyway, so the more they talked, the more I figured out who it was. And I just blurted out, was this? Boom. And it was. And then they told me that any retaliation or anything like that, I could be terminated. But I could care less about the job at the time anyway. But I just wanted to point out, like, when people accuse men, they say they're Jane Doe. And the public's not supposed to know who she is. Well, everyone knows who the guy is. Why wouldn't they share who the woman is? Long story short, I was found innocent in a workspace. It's called that the accusation wasn't credible, but I was found to be guilty of conduct unbecoming of a manager because I ran a loose ship, so to speak. This was the 90s. Everybody was loose. 80s and 90s, a lot of sexual talk and things like that went on. Employees were fraternizing and screwing each other. And there was just a lot of mess going on. I was the leader of that environment. So therefore I was guilty of conduct unbecoming of a leader. And that was rightfully so. But what I was not guilty of is sexual harassment. So let Megyn continue.
We don't get to know any of that because we protect, quote, sexual assault victims, even if we don't know if they're a sexual assault victim, even if no one's ruled that they're a sexual assault victim. Even those of us at Fox News who came forward against Roger Ailes understood that our identities, like yours truly, would eventually be made known to him so that he could defend himself, and ultimately were leaked to the news anyway. But Jane Doe gets to remain anonymous while making an allegation like this. That's where we are. Here are some of the things in the police report that Nicole claims she read. Jane Doe was seen by an eyewitness flirting with Pete Hegseth at Knuckles Bar, which is attached to the Hyatt Regency at which they were both staying and in which he gave the speech, including touching his leg or arm prior to the alleged sexual assault. They were at Knuckles Bar around midnight. The alleged sexual assault happened between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. She was seen in the bar flirting with him, including touching him. 2 witnesses at the bar, women who we believe were at the conference with her. She was one of the workers for this conference. 2 witnesses at the bar say Jane Doe did not appear out of control, intoxicated, or drugged. She did not look that way to anybody. She appeared completely in charge of her faculties. She tells the police she only had 1 glass of champagne that evening. 1 glass, that she had been drinking more than normal earlier that day, she said, but that night she only had 1 glass of champagne, according to her, and everyone around her says she appeared in control of her faculties and not drugged, not intoxicated. One woman said she might have been buzzed, but she wasn't drunk. Cops say videotapes that they reviewed show her at 1:15 a.m. and a second one at 1:30 a.m. with Pete. 1:15 a.m., she and Pete are walking out of the Knuckles Bar, presumably back to his hotel room. She claims as his handler, she was just getting him from A to B. And
keep in mind, this is like a convention for like Republican women. So it's probably pretty crowded. It has a bar at the local hotel, a bar in the hotel. Of course, after all the seminars and everything, everyone's convening there. This woman who's married, whose husband and children are there at the convention with her, is carrying on like this with another man. Yes, she's the handler. She's the one who's responsible for him, make sure he's taken care of, but she went a little too far with taking care of him. All right. But to openly do that in public, wouldn't you be 100%, especially if your spouse is there, 150% professional, not much smiling in his face, not going overboard with the touching, not, going arm in arm throughout the building. It was just a bit much. I just want to point that out.
And at 1:30, they were stopped because they had an argument poolside about, quote, his treatment of women. Totally inappropriate boundary crossing by this woman already. You're his handler. You don't know each other. You don't have any right to talk to him about how he treats women. Stay in your lane. You've behaved unprofessionally. You've already crossed a line. By the way, according to the eyewitnesses, Pete was drunk. He'd been drinking beer, not hard alcohol, but was drunk by virtually everybody's assessment other than Pete's. They are seen at 1:15 leaving Knuckles and walking. They're arm in arm. They're arm in arm, and she is smiling. She does not appear drunk on the videotape. She appears in control of her faculties and is not stumbling. Read the police report, Nicole. At 1:30 a.m., they get stopped by a hotel front desk guy who was filling in for security because two hotel occupants called and complained about a loud argument poolside. The guy went there to get them under control. Pete was yelling. I don't know if she was yelling, but they were having some sort of an argument. And she defended him by saying, oh, sorry, we're Republicans, and I'll get him to his room. She put her hand behind his back and shepherded him away from the pool. The front desk guy said she did not appear drunk. She was not stumbling and did not appear intoxicated. He, however, did, Pete. Okay, so now we've got 1, 2, 3 eyewitnesses who were there who say she wasn't drunk. Her whole story is that someone appears to have slipped her a Mickey and she was too drugged to remember exactly what happened during this allegedly traumatic rape. When was she drugged? We are now within 30 minutes of the alleged rape. She is seen by 3 eyewitnesses and on 2 videotapes reviewed by police looking absolutely fine. Within 30 minutes or so, she will be allegedly raped. When did she get intoxicated? When did someone slip her the drug? The hotel front desk clerk, we mentioned him. Then she goes to his hotel room between 1:30 and 2 in the morning. This was within moments after the videotape, and the eyewitness hotel front desk clerk said she did not look drunk. She goes into his room, and she is texting with her husband, it appears, from the room. The husband is down the hall with his children, their children, in their own hotel room looking.
The husband is down the hall. That's a pretty bold wife. To be down the hall having sex with another man who she's supposed to be his handler. Maybe there's a little marital problem going on. I don't know.
For his wife. He texted her around 2 a.m. saying, I don't remember the last time you were out at 2 a.m. Like, where are you? And no response. And then after 2 a.m., he goes down to Knuckles' bar looking for his wife. No one's there. Then at 2 additional times, I think it was 2:56 a.m. and 3:40 a.m., he calls his wife's phone, no answer. She's still in there with Pete. According to the police report, she comes back home to her hotel room with her husband and her 2 children sleeping. The kids sleeping. I don't know if the husband was. He had just called her at 3:40. And according to the husband, she does not appear drunk. The husband says she's not stumbling, she's not slurring, and she's apologetic. And what does she tell the husband? That she, quote, must have fallen asleep. Pete Hegseth said they went back to the room. It was consensual. They had sex. She felt guilty. Her husband was down the hall. And she told him that she would tell the husband that she fell asleep. The husband told the cops individually, he's not talking to Pete. She told me when she got home at 4 a.m., when she looked fine, she must have fallen asleep. Pete, simultaneously talking to the cops, not talking to the husband, says she felt guilty and she told me she was going to tell the husband that she fell asleep. She was in that room for, at best, an hour and 50 minutes, an hour and 55 minutes, because she was home by 4 a.m. At 1:30 a.m., she was seen looking totally fine and not intoxicated. When did he give her a Mickey? When did he slip her the alleged Rohypnol that made her so drunk and drugged out that she couldn't remember anything about this alleged rape? She shows up, the husband says she looks fine, and she's sorry. She doesn't wake up the next morning and run to the cops. In fact, it's not another 30 hours or so before she then has sex with her husband, and it all comes rushing back to her that she was allegedly raped by Pete Hegseth. I'm sorry, but this is a crock of shit. CBS News, the vaunted. This is bullshit. That's my opinion. I don't believe one word of this. I did the podcast yesterday, which we released this morning, and the more I looked at it, the more I slept on it, the angrier I got. And then I saw news coverage like this, CNN's lead. A California woman told police that Trump cabinet pick Pete Hegseth physically blocked her from leaving a hotel room, took her phone, and then sexually assaulted her, even though she, quote, remembered saying no a lot.
So there you have it. So she dropped all the details, all the allegations. Sorry that it took so long, but I wanted to get all of that out because some of you may not watch the Megyn Kelly show. And at least I wanted to spread that out. And like I said, give kudos to Megyn Kelly. She did amazing research. She has a crack team of people to help her with this. I only have me. So I could have done the same thing. It would have just took me a lot more reading and research. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Anyway, there's more that comes out that's a little bit more crass, a little more graphic. I'm going to share with you. But she had a guest on her show, Victor Hansen, I think his name is. Anyway, he talks more about the police report, something that Kelly did not cover, Megyn Kelly did not cover, but it's really important because she says she was raped. Yet in the police report, there's conversations about whether a condom was involved. What guy sexually assaults a woman and asks if there's, hey, do you have a condom? I'm about to rape you, but I would like to use a condom. And there's also some facts about the sexual position that she was in. Listen to that.
Yeah, I read the report as well. And there were some in there. I mean, I don't think a person who is sexually assaulting a victim has a discussion whether they can continue with the act of coitus if they don't have a condom. So it was a mutual discussion about condom protection, and then they both mutually decide it was okay to go ahead. I don't think any rapist discusses that with the victim. And the second thing that bothered me, this is kind of graphic, Megyn, but he said that at one point she was in the superior position.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, if she, that doesn't, those two items themselves don't really fit the typical pattern of a male viciously forcing a woman down, penetrating her, injuring her. You don't, rapists that do that don't say, by the way, what should we do about a condom? What do you think? Should we, I don't have one, do you? And she says, no. And she says, is it mine? You go ahead. And he said, no, it's okay. We'll go ahead with it.
So, good point. Like sexual assault victims. And we talked about, and that was Pete Hegseth's testimony. But even still, if they just went on that alone, it doesn't make any sense. One thing I want to talk about is you people out there who have this moral high ground that our elected officials and our presidential cabinet members have to be clean and have good values and listen, I don't care if a candidate sleeps with his cheats on his wife. That doesn't dictate how well they can run the country because they're a womanizer. And I'm not saying that their behavior is acceptable, but two things can be true at the same time. They can be a womanizer, they can be a cheater, but they can also be very good at making decisions or being a leader that runs the country. You know, I was on that high moral ground pedestal back when the Access Hollywood tapes came out of Donald Trump saying, women, you can do it, they'll do anything. You can grab them by the whatever, and they love it. And I was like, oh, that's sick. But then I thought about my own history. I thought about the fact that I could never run for public office today because the person I was 20, 25 years ago, if that came to light, I wouldn't want my family to go through that. You know, men and women who take these public office positions, whether it's Kamala Harris with Willie Brown, Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky, Donald Trump with everybody, um, the cheating on the wives, Donald Trump cheated on every wife he's ever had. So did Pete Hegseth. It doesn't mean that they're going to be a bad senator, congressman, Supreme Court justice, the same thing they did with Kavanaugh, Merrick Garland, whatever. Their personal lives are flawed. We're human beings. You will never find someone perfect to be in these positions. And that's why people don't go up for these positions. Picture this, if you will. You already have a good job paying 7 figures. You may work for Fox News or MSNBC. You make $2 million a year, $40 million a year, whatever the number is. You decide to run for public office, and now all the dirt comes out on you. Not only don't you get that position, but now your employer has learned things about you that didn't come to light when they hired you, and they're like, no, we think we're going to part ways. So now you've lost 2 opportunities, your job and a position that you were running for. And this is why people don't come forward. He's also accused of drinking heavily. Well, he said he's never been an alcoholic, as the title says. He's never had a drinking problem, never went to AA. But did he drink? A lot of military guys drink. Deployments are hard. I was in the Navy, as you can see. And you would be underway for 6 months at a time, sometimes 5 months at a time, 3 months at a time. When you're underway, there is no alcohol. There is no women on board, not when I served. I can imagine being in the Navy today with women on board. With the guy I was, crazy, right? But when that ship went to a port, whether it landed in the Bahamas or Sweden or Philippines or wherever, we went wild. We were drunken sailors looking for a piece of tail that ran all over it doesn't matter. Relationships with hookers, women, you name it, including some married men, unfortunately. So I just wanted to point that out, that I do not, my elected officials, they're not my significant other, and they are not my pastor. So I do not need them to be clean morally. So in one of Pete Hegseth's divorce and child custody cases, I guess he was being narcissistic, being an asshole, whatever the case may be. And his mom wrote an email to him, and the press got wind of this email. They got a hold of this email, and they basically threatened the mom, was like, we need you to speak on this email that you said about your son. And if you don't speak on it, then we're just going to write a story about it. And so she felt threatened and she felt under pressure, and she had to talk about it. Anyway, several news outlets had this particular email from Pete's mom to him, but some chose not to run it. But of course, the New York Times, being as slimy as they are, they decided to run it. Well, she was a guest on Fox and Friends, and she decided to talk about that whole incident with the email and with New York Times.
If we all went back 7 years, we would see that maybe we were not the people we are today. And I'm sure many of you across the country understand how difficult divorce is on a family. There's emotions. We say things. And I wrote that in haste. I wrote that with deep emotions. I wrote that out of love. And about 2 hours later, I retracted it with an apology email, but nobody's seen that. I want to say something about the media. And part of today is to discredit the media and how they operate. When they contact you, I let a few phone calls go, but then they call you and say they threaten you. That's the first thing they do. Right. They say, unless you make a statement, we will publish it as is. And I think that's a despicable way to treat anyone. Threats are dangerous. I don't think the way you operate it feels almost criminal when reporters call you and threaten you. I don't think a lot of people know that's the way they operate.
Yeah, so basically, mom was threatened. She was under a lot of pressure to speak more about her email to her son. And basically, he was being a jerk in his divorce proceedings and with the custody situation. She was like, that's not how I raised you. I think any of us would do the same thing to our children. If these are your grandkids, the one thing about grandchildren is that you love your grandchildren if you're old enough to have some. And you will even tell your own son or daughter if they're mistreating your grandchildren or putting them in some type of emotional jeopardy or emotional pain, knock it off. You're hurting the kids. And she sent them an email saying as much. Divorce is not easy. Child custody is not easy as well. So that was it with the sexual allegations. And the next thing that people are trying to say is, well, is he qualified? And he has a pretty good military jacket. He's had quite the resume when he came to the military. So I think that he is qualified. But here's Megyn talking to him about his qualifications.
You know what's funny, Pete? We've known each other for a long time, since our time together at Fox News. I did not fully appreciate your military background until I started reading up on you for this position. I did not realize that you got into Princeton and then volunteered to join the military and then joined ROTC and went off to Gitmo. I mean, most guys who got into Princeton and had done that well in school would have been riding that right into investment banking or some career as a partner in law. You volunteered after you had this Ivy League start to go join the military, went down to Gitmo, served your country honorably, then came back, then re-volunteered to go to Iraq during the most dangerous time you could be there, then re-volunteered to go to Afghanistan, all through, like, putting yourself and your life on the line and sacrificing a life that could have been very financially privileged. Eventually, you wound up back at Fox News and you, after running a bunch of veterans charities, but it must feel somewhat galling to have members of the media now taking shots at you as unfit to lead these guys.
Yeah, so he has an outstanding military record. Volunteer for Iraq, volunteer for Afghanistan, went to Princeton. Yeah, I mean, I know, how could you say, oh, but when you look at all the other Secretary of Defense, this is what a guy told me, a friend of mine. But if you look at all the other Secretary of Defenses, they were 4-star generals. And so what? So what? It's about what your men think about you. If you're a leader of men and they come out and go, oh my God, yeah, he would be an amazing Secretary of Defense. Another thing is that when you are in a department, as I said earlier, I was a leader of a company. And when you are a leader or your department head, you're in charge of a large group of people. You don't have to know everything about that department. Because I'm Secretary of Defense, I am going to hire some really, really good people in my department that's going to make me smarter. I just have to be able to lead people, and I need those people to respect me. I doubt those people are not going to respect me because I was a womanizer or cheated on my wife. And I'm going to ask them that in the interview. I'm going to say, hey, you've heard the allegations about me. Would you have a problem working for me? I'm a changed man now. I'm a married man now. I'm a Christian, whatever. And I want to know if you have a problem with that. I totally get it. And maybe my department's not good for you to work in. And it's a, sir, I respect you. I know your record. I have no problem working with you at all. I'd love to work on your department. That's all that matters at the end of the day. That's all that it matters. So Megyn did she got to interview face-to-face Pete Hegseth. And he's going to address some of the allegations. And the ones that you're most interested in is the sexual allegations. You're not too concerned about his military jacket. All right. So, and you're not too concerned about his drinking either. You just want to hear about the sex, right? So here you go.
You have the chance to address it. So the first is this alleged rape that took place in 2017 at a hotel out in Monterey, California, where the allegation is that you were the keynote speaker at a Republican women's conference, that you were drinking into the wee hours, and that a female so-called handler of yours, who was meant to see you from A to B, went back to your room with you to shepherd you there, found herself inside the room, that you allegedly blocked the door. She, quote, remembers saying no a lot. And the next thing she knew, things got very fuzzy, and you allegedly raped her with her husband and children in their own hotel room down the hall. The police investigated. They chose not to charge. The DA did not see probable cause to charge this case. We found out from the police report certain exonerating details, which none of the media will report, like you said it was consensual, there was no drug, and she wasn't drugged in any way, and she's on camera looking totally fine, according to the police, according to eyewitnesses, and according to her own husband, to whose room she returned at 4 a.m. She was fine, she was not slurring, she was not stumbling, and she apologized to him for being out, saying, I fell asleep on somebody's whatever. And that's what you say she told you she was going to tell the husband. All right, that's the setup for those who haven't been paying attention. Did you rape a woman in a hotel in Monterey?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've been honest about that encounter, starting with law enforcement, from the beginning. I may have been drinking, but I was cognizant enough to remember every single detail. And I'm not here to say that my conduct was good. Being in a hotel room with someone that's, not the person you're with is not okay. I own up to that. And
You see, so as what I said earlier, I said it in another video, that when you're caught cheating, people just automatically assume you're bad all the way through. Like, I could be a really, really, really good person, but I just got this thing about women. I can't help myself. It's like a drug, or drinking. It's like, I know I'm married. I know if I'm seeing other women that I'm wrong. And this is the way, this is the way people see you, right? And then when you do it, people are like, no, I believe he raped her because he's a cheater. They're not synonymous. Like, you could be a cheater, but that doesn't mean you're a rapist. And that's kind of what he's like. He's like, this is hard because I know my conduct, my behavior is wrong, but I did not rape that woman.
I've had to own up to that, and that's been difficult. And my wife's amazing, and she knew about it, but going through it again is not easy. But ultimately, I went through that process with investigators, eyes wide open and honest, because I knew I had nothing to hide. It's a really unfortunate situation. And ultimately, they dug into everything, as you said. Everyone that was there, all the video camera footage, all of her testimony, husband's testimony, my testimony, and they looked into it and said, no way, we're not charging on this at all. In fact, there's other things that hopefully could come out in the future that would our team is benefiting from more information. So we always want more information coming out of this, because the more information that comes out, the more people realize what this actually was.
And that's kind of what happened in my situation, is that the more questions they asked, the more people they interviewed, the more they said, okay, this is unsubstantiated. She's the person who accused me is not credible. So he was not, that young man, Chris Wright, he's not guilty of sexual harassment. Now, did he run a really poor ship? 100%. 100%. He should have been the leader. And this conduct should not have been going on, but he was not guilty. She was just as guilty, because people said, oh no, he didn't say those things to her. They joked back and forth together. I would see them touching and holding hands and touching each other and grabbing each other's crotch and the whole nine. And everybody did it. We did it all over the store. So I just wanted to point that out, because that's like he said, the more information that comes out, the more you'll realize that that's going to help the accused.
And ultimately, it's never fun to have your name. All they want is your name in the headline with that allegation. That's all they want. And then once they do that, they run with it. They don't care about all the details that you just pointed out.
And when they summarize the case in the secondary reporting, they never include any of the exonerating details.
Not at all. That's to be expected, though. That's how our media today operates. They take one thing, blow it up, and then extrapolate ad nauseum on it. But notice how that story has sort of faded away because there's nothing to hang on to there, which is why.
Okay, but what about, because you did pay her off
Sure.
a couple years later. She came back threatening and wanting some sort of a settlement, and you paid her. So was it a substantial settlement, and why did you pay her?
I paid her because I had to, or at least I thought I did at the time. I was newly married. I was up for potential jobs in the administration, so my profile was higher. And listen, she got lawyers that reached out to mine and said, if you don't come forward and if you don't pay money, then ultimately we're going to out him. We were in the middle of a Me Too movement. I had a great job at Fox and a wonderful marriage, and I did it it's not what I should have done, but I did it to protect that. I did it to protect my wife, I did it to protect my family, and I did it to protect my job.
So yeah, and that's why people settle, because they want it over. It's not just painful for the person that's going through it, but no man wants to put his wife through that, no matter how he feels about her, whether it's a great marriage, good marriage, or bad marriage. It's painful to put a woman through that because there's a lot of tears and crying and anxiety and, concern. It's just, and then the kids. If you're high profile, your name's in the news, headlines in newspapers, you just settle. It's like, make it go away. So, yeah. But again, we're not perfect. And it's like I said earlier, our politicians are not our pastor. It's not our significant other. Here's Pete talking about being perfect or expectations of a public official.
Am I a perfect man? No. Was I a perfect man? Absolutely not. Do I regret those things? Yes. But is it who I am today? No. And I'm just grateful for the grace of God that gives me a new chapter. And I knew stepping out in this that would be part of what would come at me.
Was that scary?
It was part of the calculation. Sure, but what's the alternative? That people with somewhat difficult pasts can never step up and try to serve the American people and serve a president who was elected? Is that the alternative? You have to be, you can't have made any mistakes in your life or reconciled for them or asked for forgiveness for them if you want to serve in another capacity. And my wife and I got together, we prayed about it a lot and said, we know the slings and arrows are coming. We're going to lock shields. That's why we're together on the Hill. We're together everywhere in this process.
So that's very important. That's a very important thing. Marriage is hard, guys. I don't know if you are married watching this. Marriage is hard. And you can't just go running. You're hearing this from someone who's a divorcee, but I was a young, immature married person, and I got married for all the wrong reasons. Never get married for the wrong reasons. I'm going to be corny here, but get married to someone who you can live with through thick and thin, through problems, concerns. I can never, ever imagine leaving my wife. I'm not saying that she would never leave me, but I'm not a runner. But I used to be a runner. I ran every time things got hard. I ran. I would go away. But as I got older, more mature, as things get hard, you figure it out. But the fact that he has a wife who he cheated on, stood by him and said, listen, we dealt with this as a family and we kept it internal and the public didn't know about it. But now it's going to come out. Honey, do you want me to run or not? I could just tell Mr. Trump, President Trump, that I don't want to be considered for the position because all of my baggage is going to come out. And she goes, no. If this is what you want, I stand by you and we'll just deal with it as it comes. Now that's to me, a good partner to have in a situation like that. So Trump shows his support for him and basically going to stand by him. Here's what Donald Trump said.
Pete Hegseth's bid to be the next Secretary of Defense got a boost Friday from President-elect Donald Trump, who posted on social media that the former Fox News host is doing very well and that his support is strong and deep, much more so than the fake news would have you believe.
We're not abandoning this nomination. We're not going to make it easy for people to allow the media to determine who our Secretary of Defense is.
The decorated Army veteran made the rounds this week, trying to shore up Senate support for his confirmation.
That's why we're here to meet with the senators. It's been a wonderful process.
The visits come amid a barrage of questions about his past, from allegations of financial mismanagement to sexual misconduct and excessive drinking.
All right, so basically, Donald Trump supports him, J.D. Vance supports him, and they're just going to keep going. They listen. He went to Trump and said, because a couple weeks ago, Matt Gaetz, who was running for a position, Attorney General, he backed. He goes, Mr. President, this is too much. I don't want to, run interference on your whole cabinet process. I'm going to step down. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to move on. Whether Trump told him to do that or whether he did it on his own, I can get how he didn't want to be a distraction. In this same case, Pete Hegseth sat down, talked to the president, and said, listen, this is all too much. You let me know. And the president said, no, you're doing very well. Fight, 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 and keep it going. And I'll let you know when it becomes too much. So there you have it. I wanted you to have all the facts. I wanted you to have the story. So when you hear, you remember when Kavanaugh went up for Supreme Court Justice, what he had to go through. And this is kind of the same thing. The opposition is going to want to tear you down. But at least if they're going to tear you down, have all the facts. If you're going to, argue with friends and family about whether he's qualified or worthy or not, at least you'll have all the facts. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Be Wise podcast. I'm Chris Wright, and see you on the other side. Peace.